URL off your phone and put it on the on a story.
Happening now.
Yeah, happening now.
Nice, refreshing apple juice.
Why not?
I can take it a little bit more down. Just a tad. Next time we do this, I'll get an LED light just to brighten it up a bit.
I had LEDs in here.
This is do you know what? This is the only room that we didn't do it in.
Yeah, I know.
Ready to go?
Yeah. Wait for Harry to put up his thing, and then we'll go from
So
there.
you guys have got.
You can clip this edit. You can clip this video with the YouTube video editor anyway, right? Just to make it from when we start.
Yeah. For the videos, I'll just strip it, and I'll strip it off YouTube and just cut it up again.
All right.
So where is anyway? I think we do the You guys talk MotoGP or whatever.
Yeah.
But don't drag it out. Do a quick one.
We don't mean to drag it out.
I know.
While we're doing that, you come up with those questions and then send them to me so I can. All right, let's get started then. Good evening and welcome to episode 52 of the Racing Line podcast. We're coming to you in a slightly different capacity tonight with a bit of visual as well as the audio. Episode 52. Happy first birthday to us. Yippee! So good.
I wish I had party hats.
I was thinking, anyway. So happy birthday to us. So we thought for this episode, why not bring the boys from the pod together? I actually sent an invite to our official MotoGP correspondent, who was unfortunately unable to make it tonight for our celebration.
No.
But yeah, got no car right now. Transmission trouble. So it's just us and boys. First time in the flesh after a year of putting this content out there. What do you have to say for yourselves?
You're welcome.
It's great to meet you. Anthony. Anthony.
You're so lame.
How you going?
Yeah, you just look the same.
I know. Nah, it's actually really good to finally do this as a group to feel a bit of the vibes.
We've been talking about it for ages, actually doing it.
I know.
I agree.
We're so technically unsavvy that we had to.
No, I think it just became easy just to do it. Like doing it virtually is actually quite easy and it's convenient and all those kind of things. You don't have to come together and spend half an hour setting it up. You know, we don't have like if you were to look at the space we're in my living room, got a Frangipani tablecloth, got a few Formula 1 pictures behind us.
This is actually from my from our favourite liveries. That was one of mine.
Yeah, well, I've had it there for 3 years. My 3 favourite drivers: Mika Hakkinen,
Schumacher,
Mick Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, the 3 OGs of our childhood. And to be frank, I don't think any drivers of the current era will ever compare to these blokes.
Mika was a beast.
Mika was a beast. Schumacher against Mika was El Bisto versus El Bisto.
I think there's drivers on the grid who already eclipsed Mika Hakkinen.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But to begin the Racing Line podcast episode 52, we need to talk about a bit of racing that happened this weekend, boys, and that was the Aragon GP from Motorland Aragon yesterday. MotoGP race won by Enea Bastianini, closely followed, I think, by 0.02 of a second by Pecco Bagnaia, and in third place and definitely keeping his championship hopes alive, Aleix Espargaro. If you haven't watched the race, the key talking points from the race was number 1, Marc Marquez came back. Number 2, Quartararo crashed into the back of Marc Marquez, and then with an injured bike, Marc Marquez wiped out Taka Nakagami as well. With all of that being said and done, we now have a fight for the championship that is 10 points between first and second, between Quarta and Bagnaia, and 17 points between first and third, which is Aleix Espargaro, pulling up the podium for Aprilia. So, Joe, where do we begin?
I think we say this nearly every race now. We started by saying, what a race. I mean, realistically, this one wasn't as, I'd say, interesting in terms of overtakes as a few of the other ones we've seen recently. It was a bit of a sort of a waiting game kind of race. I mean, first and foremost, I was very thankful that the two incidents that we had on the first lap didn't end. What would I say is a lot worse. It looked like there could have been two really bad injuries, and we know that that Nakagami now is missing a few races because of he's injured his arm somewhat severely.
Quite severely.
Yeah, quite severely. And we know that Quartararo is fine to continue, but yeah, two very gnarly accidents in two parts of the track that could have ended very badly. And I think the sort of the unfortunate thing is that it was Marcus's first race back, and you could say that it wasn't even really his fault. There were sort of just two racing incidents. The first one with him just sort of lighting up the rear tyre a bit and Quartararo being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And then the second one was him sort of having a peek down at the fender that was rubbing on his tyre at the same time as when Nakagami was coming alongside him. It was just a really awkward tumble. But I suppose at the end of the day, what it's given us is it's given us now, I think there was one stage when I was saying the championship was chalked up, and within six races now, it's turned totally on its head, so much so that there's one race in it for one mistake from Quatter again, or Bagnaia, or even Aleix, and we could have a different three different championship leaders coming into the next race. So that's something that we've been waiting for, because I think the season has really deserved the result of a finish like this.
Great. Sorry, keep going, mate.
Who's your pick, boys? Pecco.
I'm thinking Pecco because I would say if Quartararo can sort of wrestle this lack of momentum back, this would be a great championship for him. But at the moment, I just think there's too many Ducati bikes that are getting between Pecco and himself, and we saw it this week. Like these incidents and accidents happen when you're stuck in the middle of the pack, and what we're seeing is Miller and Bastianini are giving Bagnaia a cushion all these races, and even if they're racing hard at the end,
they're still gunners.
There's no one to challenge him by the end of the race except his own boys.
The other problem is with Aprilia being somewhat competitive as well. Even if you've got Aleix, normally pulling up the rear of the podium or between third and sixth, let's say, and you've got Quartararo coming from behind him as well. Like that's another unintentional rear gunner that he has to get through. So by the time he gets to Bagnaia, who's normally starting from pole and leading from the beginning, you have to get through one Aprilia, not in recent past two Aprilias, Jack Miller, not really a Suzuki, but at least one or two of the Pramac boys as well. So it's not easy. I have to say that it's Bagnaia's for the taking. And if I was Enea Bastianini, those two races, I think Le Mans and could have been Assen, where he had those two falls and kind of really blew his championship apart. I would be ruining those misses now. Unfortunately for him, he's kind of just a little bit too far, I think, out with 5 races to go.
But you know what, though? If you think about it as well, this year he was never expected to challenge for a championship. He's racing on a really good sort of older model bike, and it's really interesting watching the three different Ducati teams on the grid now, because you've got the Pramac boys who are on the totally new bike with the whole new suspension setup. You've got the Ducati factory team who are running a hybrid of last year's and this year's bike, and then you have Bastianini who's riding last year's bike, and you can really see on different parts of the track and different tracks where the three different sort of bikes really perform. Like you could see that on the back straight down there that last year's Ducati had so much more top end, but they've sort of dialed that back for the twisties. But
the twisties.
Well,
is that the technical term for it? Is that the twisties?
I couldn't think of a technical term at that exact moment. So
I wouldn't say the more technical parts of the track.
Because I think twisties sounds more fun.
I reckon we go twisties, boys.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's all beans.
It's all beans. That's my
That's something you would say.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, I think.
All right. Well, enough about that race, but let's just project towards the end of the season. We've got Motegi. We've got
Where's that?
Japan.
Japan.
Beautiful track. Motegi in Japan. We've got Phillip Island. We have Indonesia. Pretty sure. Valencia. One more that I'm missing. Who do those tracks favour?
At the moment,
Yeah.
um,
Because are we kind of moving away now from those speedway tracks to something?
yeah,
that's a bit
I
more
feel like they definitely can favour the Yamaha a little bit more than. Oh, here we go. Have a look at that.
Thailand.
So if Thailand, which is
What's
a
that
weird,
called? Buriram.
yeah, that's a weird track. Australia I think could definitely suit the new Ducati more. And even the way Bastianini rides that could suit him. Malaysia has got two massive straights, so I don't know if Quartararo will be able to keep
Stay
up
with
there.
them, yeah.
And Valencia, I mean, that's anyone's race. I mean, that could be a Marc Marquez win for crying out loud, for all we know. So, I mean, that's
Wouldn't that be a way to end
What
the
did you
season?
make of the King? First race back.
looked raw. I feel like it's
Showed
just
some pace.
showed. Oh, I think realistically, if you're Paul Espargaro, you feel like you must feel pretty shit.
If you're Alex Marquez, you'd also feel pretty ordinary too.
Well, Alex had a pretty decent race though. Finished in 10th or 11th, something like
Yeah.
that.
I was just looking at qualifying, so I mean, Mark finished in 12th, didn't quite make it into the second round, but
I mean, we had
pretty good.
what I would say is one of the more interesting finishes to a race. That the championship has really sort of taken a interesting hit now to just get it as close as possible. And
10 points is nothing, eh?
I mean, yeah, no, that's nothing at all. And then even if you think about the other news of this week, if you want to touch on it, we have we know what Remy Gardner's future is for the next year. I feel like there could be a few calculated decisions going into that joining Yamaha team.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
For him to come back.
yeah, well, Yamaha will definitely be looking to get another satellite team back in. Probably after this new bike is coming out next year. After they sort of work out the kinks and they can prove to the customers that it's a viable option.
I don't think about that, Joe. Good point.
Do they? Is it like Formula One where they say once you're off the grid, it's hard to get back on?
Yeah.
Like, is it similar with MotoGP?
It is, but if you're in the right, like there are riders who I think have taken moves to World Superbikes, and it's not going to like the Ducati team there because there's no coming back from there. But I feel like with Lecuona going to Honda, there could be something there, especially if the pace is showing.
I think.
And Yamaha, I think it's because the Honda and Yamaha haven't got the stable of young riders coming through, and that's where the options are coming
the problem that exists with like the move to World Superbikes is a demotion for Remy. And the issue that he faces is that every year, just with the stable of MotoGP, Moto3, Moto2, constantly having that flow pushing up to MotoGP, if he does want to get back to the grid, even next year when he's on the, was it GYRT? Yamaha?
Yeah.
When he's on the Italian Yamaha, essentially, if he wants to get back on the MotoGP grid, he needs to really dominate World Superbikes.
Yeah, but if
he has to.
He has to dominate, but like for him, so you have to dominate. Number one, like you can't go there and take you to settle in. That's 100% on him. But if he does dominate, say Morbidelli has another year struggling, or they bring another Yamaha team into the stable the year after. If you dominate and you can show that you're as good as Toprak, as good as Johnny Ray, they're people have always said should be in MotoGP, and you do that straight out the gate. That is the only way I can see him coming back. But the ball is, I think, really in his court for that.
But do you think he has to be as good, or I think he has to be better?
No, I feel like if he's there or thereabouts, he'll come back.
The interesting thing for me was this week they were saying that he was looking at options in Moto2 to go back down to Moto2. Now, him going to World Superbike allows him to race with men as opposed to boys. I don't think from an ego point of view you ever want to go from MotoGP back to Moto2. But is there some credence in a decision to go back to Moto2? Because at the very least during the feeder series, and eyes are constantly on you, so it's much easier to go kind of down and back up as opposed to out and then back in.
But you know what though? If you say he goes down to Moto 2, right, and he hasn't got and he doesn't have the team. There's not as many good rides in Moto 2 as there is in World Superbikes. At least, say he never gets back to MotoGP, he can still forge a very successful career in World Superbikes.
Yeah.
And I think World Superbikes is on sort of on the rise in a way. Well, it's not. It's definitely rising in a way.
It's been rising.
But it's a good show. You know what I mean? It's a good place to be if you're not going to be in MotoGP. And so I feel like for him, it's a no-lose situation. It's the best option he has at the moment for a bad situation. And if he doesn't come back, it's a good place to be.
Yeah. H, what are your views on World Superbike, mate?
To be honest, mate, I have no idea. Don't do two wheels, boys. Don't do two wheels.
I did that on purpose, mate. I just had to give you a little bit of a curveball just to.
Yeah, two wheels go vroom vroom.
So, first birthday.
Yeah.
We thought this might be a little bit of a. You know, when you haven't seen the boys for about 2 or 3 years, the boys that you hung out with at school, and they're your boys, but you know, life happens and work happens and family happens, etc. And then you get together with the boys and you start telling the same stories you've told every couple of years.
You reminisce, mate.
Yeah, you do. You reminisce. So I thought this could be a little bit of a reminiscence of the Racing Line podcast 1 year on. To think that a phone call a year ago was like, hey, let's start a podcast at the start of 2022. And then I said,
podcast boom.
Yeah, and then I said, stuff it, let's start next week. So that way by the time we hit 2022, we've got a little bit of experience.
Yeah,
and we've stuck at it.
I was amped after Monza. Danny Rick got his win, and I was like, let's do it.
Yeah, because it happened after Monza,
Yeah,
right?
the first episode was the Russian Grand Prix where Lando got pole. And
we had a lot to talk about that race, has to be said.
Yep. You go back and listen to it now, you can tell it was our first time.
Things, I was thinking about today, like, we're making rightly so, we're making a big deal. 52 episodes is a lot, right? And it's with some of the traction or lack of traction at times, it's very easy to just be like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But we are now halfway to that 2-year mark, and that's where they say you got to grind for no profit for 2 years to make something happen. And we're halfway there, and we're celebrating it.
We'll be on the grid soon, boys, interviewing.
Yeah, well, yeah. But we have to start somewhere, and I think it's the right thing to do to celebrate. Have a milestone. We found got a few good connections with motorsport races. We've had a few good interviews that we'll get into in a little bit. We've got another interstate correspondent who's getting more and more involved in the podcast, every couple of weeks. So things are looking up. And to begin, I just had to ask, over the last year, the most entertaining race that you've looked forward to saying, can't wait to get on the pod and talk about that.
Joe, you go first.
Oof, no,
put him on the spot.
I'm still thinking. I think the most excited race I've been, the most excited I've been to speak about a race on the podcast was a race we weren't even supposed to talk about. I think when Le Mans happened.
Oh Jesus!
I know.
Talking about curve.
I know. I know. But
what's Harry saying? Formula One sells, and it does.
No, you know what? Formula One does sell, and they have actually. You know what? The first race of the I loved the discussions in the off season.
Yeah.
When we had F1 testing with the new cars coming out, so I feel like there was a moment in time where, like,
hypothesizing.
Yeah, but like everyone was on the same wavelength of what they wanted out of the sport, and it was like the first time that the sport said, "All right, we're going to give you what you wanted." And there's a lot of optimism, and then the first few races really delivered on that optimism, and I think we've started taking it for granted that we know that now the cars can follow, and we're just looking for a bit more. But at the time, I mean, that's all that we really wanted, and I think that was like a really exciting, moment in following the sport. I mean, I really enjoyed last week when we were all messaging on Monday morning about the World Power Championship, the last race at Laguna Seca. Like moments like that, I think are really cool because you get to, in the moment, sort of send messages like, "Are you seeing this? How cool is this?" Like stuff like that. It's just
I think we've become like the unofficial ambassadors for IndyCar this year in Australia.
100%.
I don't know if it's got any traction yet. H, you can tell
It
us
doesn't.
about traction or lack thereof.
Well, Will Power has liked our post that I've tagged him in, so
That's a start.
I just wish he would.
we're still running black tires. We haven't got reds yet.
Yeah,
Guys.
but you know what? Like that's good. Like we start now, we've got nothing, but then they'll be like, oh, they've been talking IndyCar for 5 years. When they finally do catch on, they'll be like, these guys have been at it. They haven't just jumped on. Hence why I thought we had to invest in a bit of IndyCar merchandise. It's not Will Power because I can't stand Penske.
It's actually lucky that we're all wearing one of the different shirts of our
Andretti,
Or McLaren.
Whether,
Oh.
No, it's like sorry, WAU, A W
U.
U.
Mm.
McLaren's United or
United, yeah.
Autosport.
I'm just saying we're all in a different category. Indy F1 Supercars.
I think that embodies the pod. We didn't even mean that, by
No.
the way.
No, well, because I'm living, it's my house. I was able to quickly change and
yeah,
take my Everlast shirt off. But yeah, there we go. H,
Yo,
best race. Most excited you were to talk about a particular topic on the pod.
Coda last year. Ring comes.
I can't remember the race.
I remember just
Give me a
that
30-second
atmosphere. There was
Oh, yeah.
the Danny Rick with the bloody NASCAR. Yeah, I think that whole weekend he was on fire.
Yeah,
The
I
atmosphere.
don't know if on fire was the word.
Oh, man, he came fourth. Or come on, he came fourth in that McLaren. The atmosphere, like when Max overtook Lewis on that track, you just heard the whole place just erupt. That one was pretty good, and also unexpectedly Brazil last year when Lewis went through the whole field, because I knew you and I were going to have a
difference of opinion
on what that outcome of that race was. But yeah, they're
What
probably
was
the
my
two.
opinion? That he should have done it.
He should have done it, yeah.
And what was your opinion? That
He still had to do it, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
The end of last year, I think, is unmatched. Like, the start of this year was awesome. Obviously, the Australian Grand Prix, because I was there.
Yeah.
But that championship last year, I think we're looking at this year now going, oh, shit, it's boring. Max is winning every race.
the only thing I think
And I think it's in comparison to last year.
Or what we expected, the hype that was built, particularly for Ferraris.
the only thing I think that marred last year, because last year was awesome. It went down to,
Marred.
yeah, that sort of
Strong word.
was just how the season was too long.
Thesaurus. Keep going. Yeah.
Why do you have to?
Season was too long. Why was season too
Like,
long?
I feel like there was too many races last year, and got to a stage where I was like,
Yeah.
man, like this, like
Like when they played the final
we're
countdown for sixth.
we're at like race 20, and there's still 4 or 5 to
Yeah.
go. And it's like, man, come on.
Because we said it like every week. We're getting to the end of the season.
Yeah, and then it's like 22. It's like,
Oh, there's 8 to go, but it's the end. That's
Yeah.
8 to go is less than a third of the season to go. You know?
Yeah, I feel like last season Abu Dhabi was one race too far, but this season
it's going to feel a lot worse.
Max is just
I'm happy this season.
absolutely dominating.
I'm not gonna lie. If we didn't have MotoGP that was coming back, like if the championship wasn't coming back to a crescendo in MotoGP, mate,
Can I ask you a serious?
nothing to live for.
Can I ask you a serious question about?
Yeah, IndyCar's over.
Even SVG's, yeah, IndyCar was the bright spot. SVG's killing it. Max is killing it. MotoGP is getting juicy,
Yeah.
plump and juicy.
Can I ask you both a quick question?
Yeah.
Last year we were lucky.
Yeah.
Are you over it yet?
With what?
You know how we had Lewis's dominance and everyone hated Lewis.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I like Lewis now.
Yeah.
But we hated Lewis. We hated Mercedes.
Are
Are you at that point with Red Bull yet, or is it still too early?
Do you know the interesting thing is like it's harder to like. I don't know if like if it was just Lewis winning. That's not for me personally. That wasn't the thing that drove my dislike for him. I think it was the fact that yes, he was winning,
All the
but
bullshit on the side.
like how the races he won by 45 seconds. He was coming out of the car with zero sweat, saying that was one of the most difficult races I've ever done. Like and I'm just like,
Bono, my tyres are
Right.
gone.
yeah. I think it's all the other stuff. It's and I shouldn't hate on someone for what they wear, but it's the fashion. It's the pontificating about how tough his life was when He was a McLaren junior at the age of 6.
The
Come on,
the
mate.
message you sent in the chat the other week of that purple suit calling him Barney was probably one of the funniest things.
He looked like Barney, man. Like, I don't know what he... Anyway.
But
You would not believe that he was like my favourite driver for a long time. You will not believe it.
07, 08
And
Lewis is
Danny
different-
Rick was my
different breed.
favourite driver for a long time too.
Danny Rick still is the man. We'll come back. Anyway.
Yeah, so thanks for asking what my favourite moment was.
Oh, I was getting there. What was yours, mate?
Had to be the anticipation for the chat at the end of the season after the Michael Massey debacle and the end of the championship, because I think we were all amped to have a different winner. We were all juiced up on the fact that it was going to, like, regardless of what side of the fence you sat on, as someone in the media now, I was just...
Oh.
I was just very excited to just have a bit of a powwow about the whole fiasco, the way the race ended, etc. Because I knew that regardless, you're going to have some people that liked it, there will be some people that hated it, and you know, realistically, that championship will be remembered for a long time. And it went down to the last race, and in the last 4 or 5 races, it kind of flipped back at Saudi Arabia, and then flipped like it just kind of there was a bit of a to and fro to end the season. And going into the last race, was it tie? 1 point.
Tie or 1 point, yeah.
Yeah. So regardless, the winner was gonna take it all.
I remember talking to you. Maybe it was in the chat. We were all talking, and you and I were going to go to bed halfway through.
Yeah.
Lewis had pulled a massive lead.
Yeah, because it was a late race. It was 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it was one of those stupid desert races.
Mm.
And yeah, who would have predicted?
You know, I've changed my mind on that race now.
I still think it's bullshit. Lewis should have got his 8th.
No, the more I think about it, then especially after last race where the race was finished on the safety car. Like I think.
Now you appreciate the balls.
No, at the time. At the time, I thought, you know what, I'm happy that we have another champion.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, I feel like Lewis should forever feel slighted for that, because
He should.
No, because as far as like how F1 has always been.
So when you watched the race last week that finished under the safety car,
yeah,
did you feel like they should have just stopped?
No, I don't. I feel like they should have done the same thing again, but because they didn't do the same thing again, and they reverted back to the norm, I feel like Mark Massey has now set a precedent to let's get the race started.
Yeah.
To be finished.
Yeah, and I think that's the right precedent.
But if they're not going to go back to that again, then I think so. Say that was the first time of many that it happened. I'll probably feel.
Do you know what it feels like? This is what it would feel like.
Netflix.
What was?
It feels like they did it for Netflix.
Yeah, but no, this is what it feels like to me. It feels like you have this anticipation for the final race of the season, and let's imagine it's the final game of a Premier League season. You got to win it to get to win the premiership, and everyone's like super buzzed. Let's get this win. And then if you finish under a safety car, you have all this emotion, and it ends up in a draw, and you're like, what the hell? Yes, you have an outcome, but it was a draw, and it doesn't feel there's not the same elation or anything like that. So when I watched the Monza race, while you can say by the letter of the law that was the right thing, I think the precedent that was set in that Abu Dhabi finale should be what the precedent is moving forward.
If they're not,
because the same they do it in IndyCar all the time. Get him in the pit lane, put him under reds, get the track cleaned up, get him out for 2 or 3 laps.
I don't know why that's
chaos ensues. Then you see bloody Grosjean and Newgarden taking each other into the fence in Nashville. You see all kinds of chaos at Belle Isle. Get them racing. Like, the other thing is, you've got to think, you've got people that have paid to go there, you've got people that we're paying for Foxtel to watch the racing, right? If people are paying to watch, bloody give them something to watch. Don't give them a red flag at Spa or a dead fish to end the season on the safety car.
Fish.
Give them something
you know what?
to cheer about.
You know
and you know what? We can say that Lewis was slighted, and yes, he might have been, but I will remind you about this again, because literally I've had it's brought all the emotions straight back. He had 2 chances to pit for new tyres. He didn't take either one of them.
Yeah, but if we're going to red flag a race, they would have all changed tyres.
But it's not even.
And it would have been a moot point.
How many great Bathurst?
I think it'll be a moot point.
How many great Bathurst races have we seen where we see them slow down the safety car get just to slow it down a
Mate,
bit.
you're going 20 kilometers down
to get one or two laps in,
Yeah.
and no one has ever said,
Let him finish under safety.
yeah, let
car.
him finish under safety car because he deserves to win that
Yeah,
race.
nah.
You know what I mean?
Mate,
Like
if
it's
you
always
think about,
put yourself in a chance to win, and then they'll give you a chance to get your elbows out.
Think about
But having said that, that's not.
Chaz Moster's champ.
But that's not the precedent in Formula One. So I'm saying unless they change the way that they want to run the sport for the better, like in the way that we're talking about it, you have to always feel like he'll look like he was slighted unless the sort of they shift the
Who's JTTT? He's loving you, Joe. Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. JTTT, I think it is. It says yes, Joey.
Yes, Joe. Joey's got fans, mate.
Yeah, what have you said that's got the fans? It's one fan.
I just speak.
What have you got? What have you said?
I just speak the truth, mate.
Speak facts, right?
Yeah,
You
I spit straight facts.
Okay, you speak truth to power.
All right, I'll take that.
All right, you got a question?
Yeah.
A reminiscing question?
In terms of
The year that's been.
I have a question actually. That's not about the year that's been. It's just a Joey question.
Yeah.
yes,
So-
Joey.
Yeah,
so,
Joey.
So the crown jewel of supercar season is Bathurst. The crown jewel of the IndyCar season is the Indy 500, right? MotoGP doesn't really have a crown jewel.
No.
But
Silverstone.
But it doesn't really need it because the racing is very close.
MotoGP is the crown jewel.
Yeah. But then Formula One's crown jewel is...
Listen, don't start because you said the same thing about IndyCar and now you're...
Wait, let
the
me
most
finish my
convinced-
question.
I've tried MotoGP.
You haven't tried hard enough.
Yeah,
You haven't got there yet.
Debatable.
So Formula One's crown jewel is Monaco, which is
Oh,
okay, but
historically.
historically it's Monaco, right? But that is the most boring race on the calendar, right? Do Formula One need to come up with a sort of
A second?
a
I think
like
they've done it.
do they need to come up with a new crown jewel?
Yeah, I think they've done it.
For what do you think they with
I
what
think it's Vegas.
with Vegas?
I think that's
We haven't seen the
You
racing
feel
yet.
like that's what's going to be their crown jewel?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Another gambling.
Because
company.
what I'm saying is
A lot of money there.
like with with supercars, no matter how good or bad the season is going for whichever fans, you know that pretty much every car on the grid has a chance, has somewhat of a chance to sort of to take out the big one, and we've seen a lot of smaller teams, win it. Like it's not uncommon for one of the smaller teams to win it. You know what I mean? Or have a decent event. Same in the Indy 500. Same in the Daytona 500.
What's the norm? Like the thing about long races that, like for example, these races we're talking about, the Indy 500, the Bathurst 1000, because they're normally like there's a few 400, 499s in IndyCar, but the Indy 500 is a long race. Bathurst is a long race. Formula One doesn't have like a GP is always 250 k's. It's like always like the same.
It's always the same
distance.
kilometers.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have like a longer race that allows there to be spice, that allows there to be like attrition and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, I understand what I'm saying. Do they have to come up with an event that they can sort of market slightly differently and even then change up the format a bit?
Well, I think if you think back, and we haven't had it for a couple of years, so I think we've kind of forgotten a little bit about the spectacle of Singapore. But initially, Singapore was that change up.
I love that. I'm
And
so
I still
excited.
personally I can't wait to see these new cars around Singapore. Yeah. But there's this negative rhetoric about the Singapore track and how there's no overtaking, etc. But that is only since the cars have got bigger. Like the first couple of years you went to Singapore, it's always humid. There's always a lot of deg historically. There's always a lot of drama. Drivers are on the edge of fatigue. Now, if the cars, and I hope it doesn't happen artificially through DRS, but if there's a chance for some good overtaking to happen at Singapore, then straight away that becomes again, that's one of my favourite races. We haven't seen it because of COVID for 3 years now, but you give Singapore the chance to sing, and you won't be thinking about Monaco.
But even my question could also be like, do they so that sprint races are now somewhat of a thing? No matter how you feel about them, but do F1 try and make that weekend like different again. Maybe do like a, you know how IndyCar do the double header race weekend at Toronto where they have 2 races,
2 full length.
2 full length races. They don't have to do that exactly, but they try and do something, or even like how NASCAR do that sprint race for like the $1 million or something like that. They do something where they can market it differently.
You know what I'd love to see?
Dominicali came out and said they're looking at reverse grids next
I
year.
was gonna say reverse grid, but I would love to see a 4-day race weekend, 2 practices on. Sorry, you can even do a 3-day, but probably 4-day. Give us 3 practices, give us 2 qualifying sessions, and give us 2 races, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. And the first race is going one direction, and the second race is going another direction on a streets track. And then you market it the same way that BSB do with like the King of the Hill or whatever it might be.
Yeah, like you have like
the person who gets the most points of the 2 race meets, give them $1 million pot.
Yeah,
$2 million pot.
That's what I'm saying. Like, is that something that like should Formula One be thinking outside of the box to build themselves their own new market?
This is my thing. If you want to, because the whole,
it definitely ruins the whole purist view of sport.
I'm just saying, Netflix has created this mammoth around Formula One at the moment.
Yeah, but
I feel that they don't.
But the
think
Mirage,
they need to
the
do
Mirage is going to fall eventually.
That's right. The thing
like
is,
it's going to become a normal thing, and then you need to have an event there.
The thing is, Formula One is the current thing is we need to get more racing, give them more racing on the Saturday, right? But then you've got this race that isn't really a race, that isn't long enough to really show a whole lot. So rather than just doing something like this, is what I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. I hate tokenism. If you're going to do it, if you want to make a change, make a bloody change that's going to be dramatic, right? Make it worthwhile. So if you're going to spice it up a couple of times a year, well then give us 3 races a year that you race on the Saturday and the Sunday, and that in and of itself could be its own champion. Like, it's obviously the points will go to the overall championship, but put a pot in there, put some other kind of incentive to get people to engage in it. And if you want to make it a little bit more spicy, second race is a reverse grid. They used to do that at Clipsal years ago. Not Clipsal, at the Surfers Paradise. You used to have a reverse grid race as well.
I wish Indy still went to.
And then you get and then you get the winner based on the aggregate of their 2 finishing positions. Mate. That's, you want to get it engaging. Do something dramatic. Don't just do a freaking Friday qualifying.
You don't even have to do a reverse grid. You can do like fastest laps from the race, set the order for the next race. Anything. But like whatever. That's, I'm thinking like, do I need?
Do a fastest pit stop sets the grid. You want to get this.
So Red Bull locks out.
No, you want to give the small teams a chance to kind of
get on
the front of the road, get them to get their pit stops right.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then you've got a chance to, if you're going to be, if you want to like spruce it up, I'm all for it. It's not in the spirit of Formula One traditionally, but if you're going to do it, don't just do something like that's a bit of a. We'll do something different, but we don't want to upset Mercedes. We don't want them to see them at the back of the grid, so we're just going to do it so that it's different, but it still appeases the big tycoons. And I think at the end of the day, for this to happen, I've been saying it all year, you need someone in F1 who's just leading it without the opinions of the teams.
The big teams.
Any of the teams.
Now, I put out a thing for questions on Instagram, and had this guy, Anthony Bahaja, ask a question. Who's the most biased opinion on the pod? Now, I know who I think is. I want to know who you guys think are.
I think Anthony.
Why?
Because Anthony's very emotional. He can't see through the It's not that. I think his number one problem is he's very hard on the Australian races. Overly hard, because I feel like for unknown reasons, but also I feel like he's always he never really. I just think he comes across as very biased.
I would say the contrary to that.
Me.
I think he sees papaya and only papaya.
No, I think
he hasn't felt disappointment in motorsport enough.
No, get out of here. I'm a McLaren fan. What the hell are you talking about? I went through the whole McLaren Honda saga.
GP2 engine, my friend.
What are you talking about, boy? When Williams were getting podiums with the Martini livery,
never wins.
McLaren was like in the doldrums. Don't you forget that.
Yeah, but they've also won races and
Joseph. To counter your
anyway, I do think
Yeah,
you're
you
the
know,
most
I
biased.
think there's something like that. But I also have if you, as an Australian, we read Australian media that is always like. I understand we want to build up our own, and I'm all for building up our own. Like,
Our media doesn't build up our own.
mate, our media
I don't think so.
is built.
Not
No
as
way.
not as much as you. I think you let it on.
But you know, the thing is, there's a fine line between building up the Australian product and then letting that product influence objectivity. For example, if I was not Australian and I'm the leader of McLaren Technology, right? And I've got Daniel, like I'm going to use Ricardo just because he's the flavour of the month. But if I am objectively doing what's in the best interest of my team, he's not performing. Then I'm not going to go into the whole argument that we've laid out week upon week upon week. But if my only objective, regardless of the performance of the car, is to maximise both my drivers, objectively, the team might not have done their job to give these two drivers the best car, but he's not performing, and I don't know how that can be.
We've
debated.
The argument has never been. See, but now we're going to get into.
Let's not. But the point is,
Who do you think
my point is, you can say I'm biased because I'm negatively favouring, and like you can say the same thing about Jack Miller. That was the flavour of the year last year, right?
Considering that
with
he's
Michael and I,
in the top 6 riders.
He's in the top 6 riders, but
and
now
you think he was coming like fucking 15th every week.
Our conversation is never that he isn't a MotoGP rider.
But
just please
okay,
let me finish.
Go.
The argument was never that he isn't a MotoGP rider. It was that for him to be the best, for him to be a top rider, he needed to stop falling off the bike. And I think this year he's been a lot better. But would you say he's in the same class as Pecco and Bastianini?
I don't think. I'm looking at it from the outside. Yeah. I don't think Ducati is set up for him to win this year because he's leaving.
You know what?
I don't think he would ever have won because he's not as good as the other two boys.
I agree with that 100%.
That's not biased.
I think Jack will tell you he's not as good as the other two
boys.
Test, like he's very open about the fact that the other two boys can just preserve the tires better, and the way that they've come through their the VR Academy has really given them. Looking
back now on the conversations from last year with
Michael
and I, would you say that we're biased?
No, but I feel like you guys, for you, if he's not in the top, like if he's not competing to be a world champion, which he wasn't, like you deem that as somewhat of a, like he's not one of the top riders. Where you look at the grid, there's like 24 bikes on the grid, and if he comes fourth in the championship, which he did, you know, that's in the top 1/6. Work that out into a percentage. It's like in the top 18% of the world's best motorbike riders. That's somewhat of a negative or somewhat of a failure.
With all due respect, if our barometer is all the motorbike riders in the world, then he's a success. But if we're talking about MotoGP and we're being objective and we're looking at, because we only
how many
for a second, please, we only remember the best. Who came fourth in the championship in Formula 1 5 years ago?
Yeah, but
Danny Rick.
Jack Miller is never going to be remembered as one of the best. He's never even going to be thrown.
That was the argument.
No, it wasn't. It was It was like, is he performing at a level that he needs to perform in that team?
Well, then you have to say no.
No, but he did because they delivered the team's championship.
So when Mark Webber won the team's championship with Red Bull,
he did his job perfectly.
Mark was never going to win the championship.
But he was never going to win the championship. And the thing with Jack is that pretty much nearly every somewhat decent Australian rider that goes into MotoGP isn't somewhat decent.
Can I show you
they're usually great.
Can I show you how unbiased I am?
Oh, I want to know who you think's the most
biased.
I don't think he's biased. I think he's just fucking delusional. But
I'm Danny Rick biased. I'll admit it.
And it's funny. Like I was thinking about this week. You're in Papaya this year, but I reckon if he's in an Alpine next year, you're literally going to be decked out in Castrol and bloody Alpine.
No, I hate that bloody livery. No, I won't.
I reckon you will.
No, I've got a Renault hat.
I've
got a Renault hat.
You already opened the door.
But I've got a McLaren hat and a McLaren shirt. Senna.
You know what though?
I do love Danny Rick. I will support
I'm going to say something.
But I won't support Oscar.
I would rather you be biased and be true to your convictions and give me some spice,
Yeah.
than be lukewarm
Well,
on there.
to defend myself somewhat, right? Who over the last 10 years, if it wasn't Marquez, has been like my like I've been
Favorite rider?
Yeah.
Pole.
No. If not Pole.
Aleix.
No.
Who?
Maverick, right?
And
Give him the
Rins.
benefit of the doubt.
And Rins.
And Rins.
The actual failures.
Both of those riders. Listen, but to the point.
Yeah.
There's a podcast this year that's been recorded where I literally said he's underperforming.
Who? Maverick.
And if he doesn't lift his game, he doesn't deserve to be on the grid.
But on the same podcast, I said he needs to be given more time because these bikes are getting harder and harder to ride.
That's the difference between me and you. I think you're a bit more empathetic to the context, whereas
Do you know
I'm
why?
like, if you're not good enough,
do you know why I've
get
realised? Because I know that I can't do what they do.
out. I can't.
But you, I think, have a part in your brain where you believe
No, I don't.
if you had the time and the chance to do it, you could actually attain that.
I don't think that at all. I don't. But what I do look at.
Do you know how I know that? Because the way you speak about the mistakes that they made, or like when they slide off the bike, you think, like, how can they do that? Like, they're trained professionals. Like, 4 of them crash on the same corner in a race.
Right?
But if that was me, I wouldn't do it.
Do you know,
Yeah, he just gets mounted by other cars.
Do you know what? Do you know what I do look at though? Like, I think any racing series is full of mediocre by the standards of the series, and by mediocre I mean just grey. And then you've got some drivers or riders that are able to transcend the car that they're driving and make something happen. Mostert, Waters, to an extent. Oh, no, they're the two in supercars. You've got Marc Marquez, who I don't think people appreciate how, like, he's the best, but I don't think people appreciate that the way he rides the bike. And you could probably make the argument that there's a lot of the championships won on a bike that is fickle to say the least. And he kind of just pulls these magical results from the bike when every other teammate is not even in the top 10. And you've got someone who, even though he has had a dip in form, you have to respect someone like Quartararo with the bike that he's on, to be still in the lead of the championship with 5 races to go on a significantly underperforming bike. There has to be something said for that. And my whole theory, like my whole kind of consideration is, these guys are the exceptions to the rule. And if you want to be the best and you want to measure yourself in that particular discipline, then you need to be able to graft and show yourself with the best. And coming back to Miller, just to bring it all around, regardless of whether I'm Australian or not, if I want him to be a champion, right? And if he's going to be a champion, there are certain criteria that he needs to achieve to get there. One of them is consistency, obviously. One of them is pace. One of them is the ability at the end of the race when the tyre goes off to kind of still make something happen. And just for me, looking at it objectively, there are times when he doesn't have neither him, neither Maverick, neither Rins, regardless of how good they are, the composure to be that champion driver or rider, because they can't do it day in, day out and pull that monkey out of the bag, or rabbit out of the bag, I should say, consistently. And that's what it takes to be the champion. Anyone can be good on their day. Olivier Panis won the Monaco Grand Prix in '96 on the day, right? But to be a champion, and that is what we want our Australians to be, whether it's Miller or Ricciardo or Jack Doohan, to be a champion, or Remy Gardner, you need to be able to show exceptional ability.
You look at Danny Rick when he was in the Red Bull.
Yeah.
2014 to 2018.
Exceptional.
That Red Bull was nowhere near the best car.
That's what I'm making.
That's what I'm saying.
He was pulling performances that didn't belong in that car.
Danny Rick in the Renault.
Yeah,
2019, 2020.
I agree, yeah.
Dude was on fire. There's just something that hasn't clicked at McLaren.
Mate, we could say I've got it out for him. You know this person. How excited was I? Like we spoke about every day. How excited was I to have him come into McLaren at the time?
I think my first thought was, Lando's going to get his ass handed to
Yeah.
him.
Yep. And I said the same thing too. And you know what? That's I think for me that's also part of the like there's context to the disappointment because there's such high expectations. And granted, I don't think we appreciated that Lando was as good as he was because of we didn't really appreciate Carlos either when they were racing together. But
It'll be interesting to see how Oscar goes.
yeah,
Oscar was in the best car in F2. Dominated. Prema, like they've been the best car for how many years? The test earlier this year in the Alpine between him and Jack Doohan, Jack actually set faster lap times, which concerns me because Oscar, because Oscar's helped. Well, he's been the reserve driver for that Alpine, and then
he's been out of the car for a year.
But he's in the sim I get what you're saying. The forces and everything is different, but for Jack to come in first time driving an F1 car, and I don't think Jack's ready for F1. And I think we've discussed this before.
I think he's closer than we think.
I think he might be. I think he's at least going to be Alpine's reserve driver next year. But I'm genuinely concerned. All this hullabaloo, and Toto came out and said it. If Oscar's not quick next year, with all the shit that's gone on, it's gonna impact his career long term. So
I don't think through any fault of his own. It's probably more Webber than him.
Yeah.
But
I don't even think
he
it's
has
Webber's
got
fault.
no. They literally just did what was best for them. But the way that the optics of it isn't great, and I think Formula One isn't it's not an industry that suffers fools, and it's not an industry that wants to make itself look bad. So regardless of who was at fault, the optics are what they are. I think there's these bigger teams that kind of just want the young drivers to come in and kind of race for the shit team or kind of pay their dues. Whereas we've seen someone who's kind of he chucked an Eli Manning. He did what was in his best interest when he was picking the team that he was going to race for.
I also think how loved Danny Rick is in Formula One has impacted how the optics of it as well. Because everyone loves Danny Rick.
But it's even to the fact that if Piastri fails at McLaren, the difference will be is that he'll be the second driver to fail at McLaren back to back. And it will not be a Piastri thing then. It will then become a McLaren management thing. So I feel like that is where there is a massive difference between the two drivers. And like I've said from the start, I think the way that McLaren have handled this whole situation has been more than appalling. And you said that this was the Webber and Piastri sort of doing a Eli Manning in your best interest kind of thing. And I feel like this is the first time we've seen an actual driver and their manager do what usually the teams do. You know what I mean?
I think also like you've got to give them some.
We've seen a world champion get kicked out of the car the year after he was world champion and paid obscene amounts of money because the team wasn't happy with. Wasn't even that they weren't even happy. They had signed up a driver to race the next season before the season had even finished.
That Damon Hill?
No, it was Kimi Räikkönen. So like these things sort of happening with teams thinking their best interest isn't uncommon. And I think we're just not used to the driver actually having the final say.
The reality is, regardless of the optics, if you just want to talk about Oscar, Alpine weren't expecting Fernando to leave. When he made the decision to leave Alpine, they were kind of caught with their pants by their ankles because they thought they had the development driver, as a shoo-in, but he'd been looking after his best interests in the meantime as well. Now,
I think Alpine totally cocked it up.
Yeah, but the optics are obviously what they are.
Both drivers had no clarity.
So it is. Listen, it is what it is. The reality is, the Court of Arbitration saw no issue with what Piastri did. So the issue has to be with Alpine. And you've got people like Toto. I'm getting sick of what Toto Wolff says. To be honest with you, he's become a bit of a
Christian Horner.
Yeah, a bit of a pontificator as well. All these pontificators, all these pontiffs, mate.
Where's Michael?
Sounds like you when you're monologuing.
Yeah. Another question.
I think
SVG one.
I think I've got what. Yeah, I think if we can talk about SVG and I would like to hear your thoughts about the upcoming Bathurst before we go off live.
All right, so Bull Turtle on our Discord
Bull Turtle.
I don't know who Bull Turtle is, but he gets involved. I love it. He's asked, with SVG's dominance and his flurry into rally,
Yes.
does SVG continue to dominate in supercars, or does he make the change of series like Scotty Mack and pursue WRC success?
I reckon he should.
I don't know if he will go to WRC. To me, leaving supercars and doing what Scotty did and go to IndyCar makes sense. I don't know about, obviously SVG loves rallying, so there's that to take into account as well. But I don't know, if you're leaving supercars, wouldn't you go to a category like Indy or something?
WRC is a bigger category than IndyCar globally. The issue with SVG is a little bit older than Scott. So for him Scott was lucky. He raced for Penske. They saw that he was a dominant force in supercars and still relatively young. And they said, let's kind of give him the chance. You got to think, SVG was older and is now 2 years older again since Scott left IndyCar. I think for Van Gisbergen, though, you can only win. I don't know if everyone has it like WinCup, the ability to just stay in the category for 7-8 years, be uber dominant, and still have the same level of fulfillment from the challenge. Now, granted, there's other drivers, Mostert, Waters, etc., that are able to bring the challenge every now and again, but with just the team that is in, the kind of metronomic nature of Red Bull Racing, and they just always have the car set up. They always have the Saturday. They never have an off weekend. You've always got, every other team has peaks and troughs. For the most part, you might have one or two troughs races, and not even a race week. And even last week at Pukekohe, I was away last week when they were at Pukekohe, but Saturday looked out of sorts, came back and dominated on the Sunday. So even their troughs are just literally a blip race where they finish in 5th. So for him, knowing the kind of person that he is, if he's making that transition to rally, and he's already kind of at a point where he's one of the better drivers in the Australian rallies that he's doing, go make a good fist of it while you still can and try to do something in WEC, because you're up against the best. You're racing in all these amazing locations around the world. He will find, with his Red Bull connection, he will have factory support at whatever team he wants, whether it's Toyota, Ford, Citroen. They've all got some Red Bull affiliation. He can go to whatever team he wants with factory support and have a real fist at it. I would love to see him try that. I think it's better for supercars, because even though we see these young talents like Feeney, Di Pasquale, who are great drivers, young drivers that are touted, they don't have the same super dominance that we saw with those two Kiwi drivers.
Yeah.
So I would love to see it for supercars' sake, because it just gets a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, I'm struggling this year.
But also for him, mate, you got nothing left to prove in supercars. You've won 3 championships. You're an absolute gun. No one's going to think any less of you. Go have a go while you still can, because you're good enough. I think we've seen that he's got the raw talent. Give him 2 years there, and I think we might see another very successful career outside of supercars. So I'd love to see him make the move.
Joe?
It's probably just
I don't know.
Taking every word I've just said.
I don't know if I did actually. I don't know if I don't know if he would want to do a full season of WRC. And it's not that he couldn't do it. He definitely could. But number one, why would he, what would he'd have to have the right motives. I feel like us talking about WRC, just go in there and have a go is one thing. But when you then see some of the terrains, landscapes, and tracks on the thing, I know for him, he gives everything 10/10.
I'm not saying have a go. I'm saying go and make a serious use of it. Have a year.
But
go around.
For me,
do the Scotty route. Have 2 years and then push for a championship.
It depends where his love is. He might just love racing supercars. That might just be his love. He doesn't want to dabble in other stuff. You know what I mean? Especially with the whole promise of how this new supercar sort of platform going from next year is going to be. He might just be hanging for that that platform if it's going to fix what people are talking about. You know what I mean?
That Mustang boys.
Yeah. So I
They changed the aero on the Mustang.
had
a
to,
bit.
because the new Mustang came out this week.
Oh, so they've changed the aero of the car. They have to get re-homologated now.
They had to just do an aero test, make sure it had the same numbers.
And it does.
It's just the front. It's just the front.
The
grill.
front looks a bit better.
It looks wicked.
Oh, it looks
What,
amazing.
what,
Can I finish my point though?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
no, I just got
I
excited.
asked that on the
No,
pod.
I got
asked
excited.
that on the chat.
It
No one
looks.
responded to me.
It looks. I did.
No, you didn't.
Well, you probably put it at a wrong time, like at 10:30 in
Not
the
at
morning.
high traffic.
Yeah, not at high traffic time. like we've seen him dabble in a bit of. He's dabbled in some IMSA. He's dabbled in rally now. He's driven an LMP too. Like I think he's more than comfortable doing his supercars career, making north of north of $1 million a year.
King's ransom.
Making good money.
A prince's
And
ransom.
then he can just go pick and choose the events that he wants to race at. I'll go do a Le Mans. I'll go do a Daytona 24. I'll do a Bathurst 12-hour.
But if you're good enough,
Yeah, but not everyone's got that.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have expected to be as competitive as he was in Australian rallies as like straight away. Now, granted, Australian rally is not the World Rally Championship, but hypothetically, if you are, like he would have won his first rally if he didn't have any issues, right? If you are that good straight away, there's only one logical next step.
No, but it's not, because his logical next step is I want to go win supercars again. Maybe he wants to
Okay,
go.
so
Maybe he wants to win more championships than J-Dub, more Bathurst than Scaife, and more races than Win Cup as well. Maybe that's his drive.
For me, wouldn't you at least give the new gen a go
100%.
instead of jumping?
I'd give it the.
But if you've grown up and you and like Greg Murphy's your idol, and you love supercars, like there's like for me, like if I was a kid, I love supercars more than I love Formula One. I love supercars more than I love IndyCar, right? So like the chance of going to prove myself in a category that I love less wouldn't have a draw for me.
But if you
You know what I mean?
if you won the supercars category that you love,
He's only won it, what, 3 times?
but let's say you
He
won
has
it.
to win it another 4 more times.
Let's say
to
you
be
won it
champion.
3 years in a row
Yeah.
by 400 points.
Yeah.
There's already 500 points there right now.
No, it's like
But
300.
if you won 3 championships in a row by 400 points,
Yeah.
right? That love, that drive, that aspiration that you had as a kid is well and truly satisfying.
No, it's not.
Because
Look at Lewis, mate. Look at
Look at Lewis. He's won it 8 in a row. He's still doing it. How many Bathursts does he have?
2.
That's it. Realistically, for someone of his skill, he isn't even. He's got the same amount of Bathurst wins as like Will Davidson. You wouldn't even put them on the same, and that's not an attack at Will Davidson.
Oh, I knew how
You
you
know what I'm
meant.
saying?
Yeah.
But like what I'm saying is like there is so much. Like if he truly wants to be the best, he's not even on the Mount Rushmore yet.
Did you guys talk about Wilbur last week
Wilbur,
on the pod?
I did a bit. I just said I said
He's
like
making Anton look.
from the start of the year, he's come.
He's making
really made me
Anton
look
look
silly.
like he needs to lift up his boots.
Anton was a bit unlucky last week as well. Then.
Unlucky, my ass.
You know what?
He's been unlucky
If
all year.
Anton wins Bathurst, he's had the better season. So
He's
like
been Anton has been like
Anton has been good. mate.
underwhelming.
He
all
hasn't.
year.
He hasn't
He's been
underwhelming.
underwhelming.
What was the race where he
Yeah,
spun
man.
SVG on the last corner on the street track?
Yeah.
Anton. Townsville.
Townsville.
Yeah, that was.
He's been underwhelming
I don't think so.
for all the pomp and ceremony and what
You know who's been underwhelming?
the next.
You know who's been
big thing?
underwhelming?
Who?
Walkinshaw.
Yeah.
After me jacking him off for the whole preseason.
I know. And after
After the start they had,
Yeah.
like Chaz came
I
out.
was
Like
peaking, man. I was like,
yeah.
it's. Having said that, if we win Bathurst next week,
You know what the
or
good thing
next
for
race?
Walkinshaw is, but with all this chatter about the factory support that all those Ford teams are going to get, hopefully they can take it to the plate.
It's not even that. If I was saying to Harry last week, we've seen the cars this year perform relatively similar to at like certain tracks last year. So hopefully that Walkie
Bathurst.
rolls off the track at Bathurst, has our nice 1 second lap advantage. You know, and we don't blow
You
a
got a
tire
half
halfway through the
We
race.
got another half decent subby in as well.
Yeah,
with
we've got
Fabs.
Fabian Coulthard.
I've got a question, boys, that I've wanted to sort of discuss in the whole year, and we haven't had a chance to do it. And it's one of the most simplest questions. Who's the greatest of all time? Who's the GOAT?
Greatest what?
Racer.
I was going to say F1, but yeah.
driver. The greatest driver.
Not
It
championships.
has to be a F1 driver. though.
Not championships. I'm just going off pure racing
I
talent.
have two.
Care to elaborate?
I have one.
My first one is John Surtees. Now,
Oof.
you're going to be like, what the hell? But for someone
Was
to
he
be-
from the 50s or 60s?
He won Formula One and the Motorbike World Championship. To do that is ridiculous because the disciplines are like not even.
Wasn't expecting that, eh?
I
But
wasn't either, but I thought because you said anyone,
yeah, yeah.
right? So,
All right, fair enough.
but if you are talking about the greatest race of all time, I personally think that without a doubt it's Michael Schumacher.
Oh, that's what I
Literally
expected.
without a doubt. You can say Senna if you want,
Yeah, that's who mine is.
but
Off pure talent, jump in the car and drive the bloody thing.
I don't think
Senna.
I don't think it's Senna. I think if that's your rationale for who's the greatest of all time, I think there is no better example, especially in this day and age where every motorsport, like every racer, is now a specialist in their own domain. That it has to be Fernando Alonso.
say it again.
Oh, he's
He's
up there.
More than Schumacher.
It has to be
Can't
because
be.
I'll explain it
Elaborate
to
and I'll
you.
rebut.
If you're jumping into a Formula One car, you've won 2 world championships, you're 41 years old, and you still have got probably the best racecraft on the grid.
The guy's
Like
a beast.
undeniably in the top 2 or 3 in racecraft. Still at this age, right? You're 41, nearly 42, right? You then jump into an Indy car, and you are one mechanical failure away from winning the Indy 500 on your first run, right? Then you jump into an LMP2 car, and you are just as fast as every racer in that Toyota team who's been racing that. You're so good, in fact, in that Toyota team that they remove one of their top drivers from the team to put you in there for the whole season. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying
Listen.
There's
front and center of my living room. The great man,
Fernando.
El Nando.
But I'm saying, but Harry said, jump into a car and perform, right?
Yeah, I don't think
like you can't. The only thing I would say about Fernando that probably Schumacher has on him is that Fernando's mentality is a bit brittle, and I feel like him and working with his team is probably the part that can let him down, especially in his younger years.
Can I throw you one?
I still think it's Senna.
Listen,
Senna
is.
If he didn't die in '94,
I can answer.
He had another at least 10 years, I reckon.
I can answer.
He was only 33.
I can answer the Senna question and the Alonso question with the same analogy.
Go.
All right. Senna raced the Tolman, did great things in it, showed his potential. Alonso, same thing in Minardi. Schumacher, same thing in a Jordan. So as a young protege showing their skills, they all tick that box. They went to a second team. Schumacher, Benetton. Senna, Lotus, equivalent.
Yep.
Renault for Alonso, but when Renault wasn't the powerhouse they were a few years later.
Yeah.
I know truly Renault.
Yeah, the Jensen Button Renault, that kind of team.
Oh, I saw a photo of that the other day, actually.
Senna, able to win races.
Yep.
Alonso, able to win races. Schumacher, able to win championships with that car. Then they go to the top team. They all are able to progress to the top team. Now you can say, let me finish and then I'll come back to it. Schumacher, the top team that he goes to is only top team in name.
Yeah, I'll
only
give you
top
that.
team in name. Yep. Senna goes to the top team and dominates, but you could probably make the same argument about his McLaren team and the Mercedes team as well. That at the time that he was there or that Lewis was there, if they didn't dominate, they wouldn't be
in a job
worthy, right? Schumacher, on the other hand, is an absolute dog, right? Can't do anything better than sixth unless it's a wet race where he wins the wet races during that season. I think at Hockenheim and at Catalunya. Builds the team. Now, you can say debatably that the incident with Jacques Villeneuve, the incident with Damon Hill when he won his championships, had people outside of the teams that he raced for up in arms. But there is not one person in Ferrari, when you look at documentaries or read the books about Schumacher, that has anything negative to say. He built the team. He led from the front. He was there for all the practice. He stayed in the garage. He knew all of his mechanics' names, their kids. Like, he built the ethos of Ferrari. The workmanship, the relationship between them, and no one had a negative thing to say about it. Same thing about Alonso, gets to a car that should win, wins. The drivers are there. But if it wasn't there, rather than building the team, he's a bit of a self-destructor. A little bit.
Still is.
Okay, and the same can be said for Senna. Now, obviously, Alan Prost was there as well, which makes it a little like, I'm not gonna have a go at him for having to kind of
Get out.
piss on the tree when the other drivers are gun as well, for use of a better word. But with all of those drivers going through 3 tiers, the only driver who was able to take a team that wasn't at the top and bring all the... Now, granted, they had the resources to do it.
I was going to say.
They had the resources to do it, but
And
it
they
still
gave
has to
him
be done.
half a
Because
decade.
Alonso had 5 years and all the resource, and he didn't do it.
Yeah, because that team is a shit show.
So, even still, the team's a shit show. We're seeing it right now. We saw it with Alonso. Raikkonen won the championship purely out of consistency, not out of pace.
Can I tell you
But
who's
the
the
first
GOAT?
has to be Schumacher.
No. It's Ross Brawn.
That was going to be my point. Schumacher was at Ferrari, Ross Brawn.
Hamilton and the Mercedes started with Ross Brawn. Boom.
Jenson Button wins the championship.
Brawn.
Ross Brawn.
That's the GOAT.
Okay.
That's the GOAT.
So then you put.
Dude, I love Schumacher.
You
I'm
put
not
the
debating.
I'm putting Adrian Newey in that thing too.
You can tell me about these amazing engineers, and I'm not going to in any way slight them. Like, they are the brains behind the tech of Formula One. They are freaking OG dudes. But you can't tell me that the pilot in that cockpit doesn't make the
I
difference.
think that the engineers...
Because the reason why...
I think in this generation now, 90% of it is the engineer,
so when
and
Ross...
10% is the driver.
So
regardless of who's in that in Max's Red Bull, or who was in the especially the Mercedes in the last couple of years, I feel like there was you could have put Hulkenberg and let's say Hulkenberg and Checo in the Mercedes team, and they would have won the championship.
How do you quantify, like,
the last 10 tenths?
96 when he was in a dog
Who?
that John Barnard designed, Schumacher,
Yeah.
absolute dog. How do you quantify the races that he was able to win?
Because I feel like the cars back then were a lot closer
100%.
because they weren't as much aero dependent as they are now.
For
Like,
Williams
back then
to be
was-
so dominant back then.
No,
for
but
a small
Williams,
team.
Williams, when they were dominant, had the best engineer.
Yeah, they knew it. That's what I'm saying.
But, like,
They also had the. They also had the.
They invented
what was it called? The shock active suspension.
They developed everything. And then he invented
That changed her.
the floppy nose.
That's why Senna crashed, because that was the first year without the active. But for a flop like bloody Villeneuve to win the championship,
Villeneuve wasn't a flop.
he had one good season in Formula One. The guy's a flop.
Villeneuve had 2 good seasons.
I will say that
He won 1 season. He won the IndyCar as a youngin. He won the Indy 500.
Guy's a flop.
The biggest issue with Jacques Villeneuve was that
He's a
number one,
jackass.
he was a dickhead.
He still is a
And he
dickhead.
rubs people the wrong way. And number 2, every decision that he made after Williams
was for money.
was from... Exactly. He went to a new startup, BAR, flunked. He went to Sauber, not a good team, wasted another couple of years. Went back to BAR, flunked. Like, every decision you made. Went to Renault. every decision he made after leaving Williams was to a shit team.
But he jumped in a championship car.
He jumped in a championship car, he won. But when he was racing against Schumacher, and the argument could be made that the car that Schumacher had was a great car by that stage too. He did it.
Can I say something?
And
there?
he was awesome.
Who?
Villeneuve.
He was awesome, but
In
can I say the great-
97, 98.
Can I say the greatest indictment of Williams drivers in that generation?
Damon Hill.
If you want to think about it, Williams thought so little of their drivers that their world championship driver
Went to
was
bloody-
kicked out of the team and had to drive for Arrows.
I know. Arrow Yamaha.
1 year after winning the
I
championship.
can't stand him either, is it?
Who? Damon Hill?
Oh, it's
Why?
It's just
No, he's a
I
he's
love
a feel
Damon
good story
Hill.
of Formula One.
no,
I love Damon Hill.
can't deal.
What do you know about Damon Hill?
It just rubs me the wrong way.
So can we make a consensus? Greatest of all time.
I want to say Alonso.
I'm gonna say Senna.
After all
Can
that,
you back it up, please, though? Because he's backed it up. I've backed it up. Why?
You're telling me,
I don't know if you have to back up Senna.
yeah, you're telling me
I
that
do. I think he
that
died.
lap around Monaco,
Yeah,
in
but that doesn't define the greatest
that-
of all time.
in that car, in the wet, with the old bloody
Yeah, but
manual gear shift, you're telling me that all the drivers
Yeah,
these
but-
days would be able
but
to
can I-
get there and do it.
no, but we're not saying that. But if you, everyone's argument for Senna being the greatest of all time was if he had a few more years, he would have got there,
I
right?
don't think you would.
But
I think he
realistically, he
was in the Williams.
he struggled to be the greatest of his own era. Everyone says, oh, he had the best racecraft and stuff. But even like if you just measure him up against like the people he was racing against, like Prost, so people would say Prost still has more championships.
He
I think
won
he's
them
got
before he
more
started,
race
but-
wins. But like, so what I'm saying is, Senna. Your argument for Senna being the greatest of all time was his racecraft, but he doesn't have the wins. He doesn't have the championships to back it up. My argument for Alonso is that he has he has 2 championships, but he's done it in different disciplines. And his one is Schumacher in Formula One, most championships now, but won 2 championships in a team that probably shouldn't have won 2 championships, and then literally built an era of absolute dominance.
But your argument of Alonso, I don't think Senna had the I want to jump in something else and drive.
You know what the thing about Senna is? Like, I love Senna. I think
We
the
never
way-
saw him be
the,
shit.
the way we look
Well,
at
at the end of his
Senna,
career.
the way we look
It
at
wasn't shit though.
the
It was
way-
still.
No, he wasn't shit.
the way we look at Senna is the same way we look at, like, when we think about World Cups, we think about Brazil. Brazil hasn't won a World Cup for a long time, but they're flamboyant. They go about playing football the right way. Senna races hard, like, doesn't give an inch. Sometimes puts it in the wall, putting someone else into the wall as well. Like,
Leading Monaco by 20 seconds and doesn't back
there,
off.
there are things that he does that you're like, this guy is amazing, and then there are things that you're like,
What the
you
fuck?
have to
but-
do
but
that.
al- But
you
also,
have to do that.
but
Like, I think there's a lot of romance, and even like he's South American. He's
but if you
the women loved him. Like there was more. Like there was a whole, like religious experience associated with
Yeah,
Senna.
but Senna was like the darling of a country.
Mm.
He made Formula One bigger than it's ever been in South America.
Mm.
He sadly passed away in the sport. You know what I mean? So we never saw him deal with the back end of his career when all the up and comers were coming in.
Mm.
We never also the whole thing like you die in the sport. No one's really going to say anything bad about you. And everyone's like, oh, he still had so much more potential, and I understand that. But I'm saying if you don't have the race wins or the championships to back it up, or you haven't done it in more than one category, your numbers don't give you enough.
I don't agree with them.
Do you know what it's like? It's like the Aaron Rodgers Tom Brady argument. That's what it is. You can say he's the best thrower of the
It's the
football.
eye test.
You can say he's the best thrower of the
It's the
football
eye
I've
test.
ever seen, right? But if you don't have the numbers to back it up, when the people like us who we didn't even see Senna, but we live it off our sort of our parents' nostalgia, and then we look into it. When you're coming from in say 100 years time or 50 years time, when someone's just seeing the records in a
Yeah,
book
you're gonna be
and
the
they
best
see
bet.
Schumacher,
No.
or Hamilton, yeah, they'll see that, and that's you know what I'm saying.
They see that and they think that he was in any way comparable to the great Mick.
The guy can drive. You can't deny that.
The guy can drive.
But
He can
I do
walk.
think he's better.
I reckon a bloody.
I do think he's better.
I reckon a
Who?
one-armed man could drive a bloody Mercedes.
Alonso, then Hamilton.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I'll say this. Alonso was a dominant force when Hamilton came into McLaren, and Hamilton bloody
Handily.
Oh yeah, but
that
Hamilton was the
that
McLaren
Hamilton-
Junior.
That Hamilton,
It's kind of Lando Ricardo.
that Hamilton, short hair, one earring,
Bold, you mean?
yeah, bald, one earring, yellow helmet, humble, quiet, unassuming. That Hamilton was a G,
But he's hashtag blessed
and
now.
all he cared about was pace.
But
Now,
Nando, I agree with him.
I love him.
At 41,
Yeah,
I'm going to say Max. I'm going to say
Charles.
Max. Maybe Charles. But we don't really see much of that because he's in a team that cocks up every week.
I'm not sold on Charles.
I want to see him in a... Anyway.
He needs to be in a well-run team before
He
I
does.
give him.
But he needs. Even though he's not in a world run team,
yes,
he needs to be demanding.
He needs to.
He needs to get.
He needs to, like I said half an hour ago, he needs to be able to pull results with a car
Yeah, but he
or a
needs to-
situation that is not
He needs
ideal.
to own his results.
Their deg is shit. And that's what's costing them.
But it's
They
not,
can't stay on Red Bull's pace at the
It's not
moment.
even the deg. It's like I don't care if your car isn't good enough. We can all see that now. The car's not good enough.
It was
Own-
rapid in
Own your results. Own your strategy. You know, everyone can respect Carlos for owning the results. He makes mistakes, but he owns the strategy. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So do the extra work, become more proficient in strategy call, tire degradation, making calls that are gonna actively sort of benefit your race. Because if you have no faith in your engineer, which he obviously doesn't, Carlos has taken a lot of that from his engineer, understands the homework and says, no, we're not going to do that. And then his engineer then has to adapt. And we've seen that in 3 or 4 instances, and it's actually benefited him. So if you want to be the best, be the best, in the homework and on the
in
track.
the homework. Be the best in the
I
homework.
think be the best doing your homework, because Schumacher, you say Schumacher was the best. You hear the stories of him
Studious.
in the garage of the team till midnight all week, making sure it was perfect for 5 years before he had his run.
Meticulous.
So don't leave any stone unturned.
If Max continues on the trajectory he's on now,
Greatest of all time, undoubted. If he keeps going, he's so young.
24.
He's got 10 years of this.
You know what I love about Max?
I can't see Max doing. If he's winning for the next 5 years, I can't see Max hanging around for another 10.
I do,
because
he's got that drive.
I don't know.
And
he has got the drive.
He's going to be, if he...
Oh,
do you want to leave it there? He's going to be...
I've got a few more questions.
Yeah, but he's going to be the most hated driver. If he keeps
Do you know
going.
why? You know why? Like, I love to hate people, but it's
You don't
hard.
say.
It's hard to hate Max because all he cares about is racing. And if you're a true racing fan, you can hate that he wins.
Can you sing his
You
song?
can hate that it's not Max, Super Max, Max, Super Max.
Shout out Dylan.
Yeah. But what was I saying? But there's no sideshow with him. He's there to race. He's there to win. He does his job. Makes it boring for us. But you're respect.
You don't hear him on the weekend.
Exactly.
I don't hear him during the week.
He wears the team shirt. He wears a pair of jeans.
That's all it's about.
He wears a pair of sneakers.
wears the same helmet every week. He loves it.
Helmet.
Gets
Nice
involved in
helmets.
racing.
Involved in
Has his
e-racing.
own team.
He's just a salt of the earth racer. He's not someone that's freaking
He comes Danny Rick. The Danny Rick.
recording YouTube videos of the tattoos he's getting,
Oh,
or
yeah.
trying to record
the helmets.
music, or wearing freaking.
Heaven forbid
Moon
someone
boots.
does what they want in their spare time.
Can I tell you?
Do what you want.
What do
I
you
don't
do
need
with
to
your
know
spare?
about
Yeah,
it.
but you don't have
I
to
don't
watch it.
I don't need to know
You
about
don't
it.
have to watch it.
All I do is record these things and put it up for the world to see as well. No, he's there to race. I love people that are there to race. Do your job. That's it. Don't preach to me. Just do your job. Don't tell me about how hard your life was. I don't care. You're making $20 million a year, race.
And
Mate,
we're getting
Shut up.
cancelled.
If Max is only on 20 million a year,
Hey, it could be 50. Regardless, once it's 20, it might as well be 50.
hey,
Right.
Danny Rick's getting 20 to not race next year.
Danny Rick is getting 20 anyway.
You reckon Danny will become a correspondent? He'll be so free next year.
No,
Mate,
no
I would
chance.
love to actually talk to Danny Rick.
Would you?
I would be honest as shit, but
I would be so scared
You
that he'd
reckon?
listen to some of the shit you've said
no, I wouldn't.
and
Nah,
reject us.
I don't
But
think
he'd
he's-
see this and he'd be
He's
like,
a
oh, well, that's a
salt
good
kind of guy.
Is he?
Yeah.
You reckon understand your disappointment in the
If he
in the debacle?
if he went back far, if he actually did some research on me, went back far enough, he would be able to scroll.
Where would he see it?
He would be
You're
able
nobody.
Just listen. Hypothetically, he could scroll back through my
To your hypothetical
through my
social media.
no hypothetical. That's real. He could scroll back through my cover photos and see a number of beautiful Danny Rick
Pics.
pics, mate. The
Yeah.
honey badger when he won in Hungary, like that with the helmet on. Monaco
When he was Big Dick Rick.
when he, yeah.
He's on. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was.
They were good days.
Yeah, I put my wife on my phone.
Yeah, so do I, but you know.
Yeah.
Well, you got two.
You
You
can
got,
have,
have you got two?
you can have multiples, mate.
How do you do that?
Oh, see?
On Apple.
You jump on the Apple train, my friend.
I'll just change the time. 3:20. There you go. Any more questions? Okay, here we go. Just to finish off then. 1 year in, this is where we are. In 12 months' time, what are our aspirations for the pod?
I hope you're back.
Yeah, I will be back.
I hope so.
I will. Just need to take a little bit of time off to get my affairs in order. Take care of
Father a baby.
to father a child, to be there for him. But I think I'll be back fairly soon. Maybe not in a week by week capacity, but yeah, maybe not in a week by week capacity, but
By the next year.
I will still be involved in the pod. I'll still be investing in ads for the social media campaigns.
You
Yeah,
bankroll.
you're the Facebook one, I'm the Instagram one.
Yeah, Joe, what are you? You're
Make
the
the
brains.
videos.
You'll make the beats. Yep, great. But yeah, in a year's time, what's the pod look like? What are our strengths and where we need to improve?
I think we have good bands, but I think the bands is obviously better when it's live because you can
Bounce.
you can read each other's emotions and stuff.
Mm.
I mean, I just love doing it because I just have finally you don't really have many places to discuss motorsport with people who invest as much.
Particularly the deep dive,
Yeah, like to deep dive and sort of flex your I like
the
flexing.
mental muscle.
Yeah, I like flexing like my knowledge and my deep thoughts about stuff. And when
That's not where I
you know-
thought that was going. That's not where I thought that was
Yeah,
going.
you know what my favourite moments are?
Yeah.
Because my favourite moments are when Anth goes, I didn't think about that. That's a good
Good
point.
point, Joe.
This
No.
one here, you see him go,
Who?
you.
Yeah.
You always
It's
have this
it's
look
like a
like,
nod of approval.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know why this is so bad? But
You just
Like,
think I'm dumb.
it's not even about motorsport. Whenever Joseph gives me a peach, because I don't know why I don't expect it. It's probably because 95% of
You're a
the
piece
stuff-
because you're an
You're a
elitist.
piece of shit.
95% of the stuff that comes out of his mouth is Star Wars or
What's wrong
like
with Star Wars?
or Call of Duty. So when he gives
Yeah,
me
okay.
like a pearl, like it's not that I don't respect it. It's just that I
No, you don't respect.
I just haven't anticipated it. And then when I get a zinger, I'm like, yeah. And I think even with the motorsport stuff, like, there are I have to give you credit. There are times when you do think about things in a way that are, like, I don't want to
More
say...
than surface level.
Because I don't think about things in a surface, but there are ways, like, you have empathy for some situations, or even you kind of are able to contextualize some things in a way that I can't. And when you do it,
You know what?
and I hear it, I'm
think
like,
I know.
you know what?
It's because I'm a genuinely nice guy. And I think I can put myself in other people's
Yeah, I think
struggles.
you're the empathizer of the group.
Yeah.
I think you're the motivator of the group, and I think I'm the critical eye. And I think you need all three of those.
Jackass.
I think you need that trinity of
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy-
not the Holy, But you need those three components all pulling in different directions to have something that has a solid foundation. I think that's what we've got at the pod.
After we finish, I'll tell you exactly how it breaks down, but I can't say it on live.
All right.
It's very inappropriate, but
Well,
it's good.
F1 next week.
No, so this weekend's another. So this is pretty much as long as the bloody
3 weeks.
break.
3 weeks.
Yeah, the 30th, I think.
We got MotoGP again soon? No, a week off. Then we go on to
Week
Thailand.
off. I would like, you know what though? It's good if we have a week off. Maybe try and get an interview organised for next week.
Yeah.
Will Seal.
Or Will Seals, you want to come on? Yeah. Ask him if he wants to do next week.
Mm.
Otherwise, we'll do.
Hey, Will, if you're listening,
Yeah.
get in contact if you want to pod next week.
Put it in the comments.
Yeah. Okay. I reckon we should also try to get some of the old boys back.
Oh,
Joey Mawson.
Joey Mawson would be
on.
great to
I'd
talk
like
to.
to.
1 year on. 'Cause
I'd
I think we look at here's a reflection that I've had. I look at some of the early pods we did.
We were too prescribed with that.
Yeah, well, particularly the Mawson one. It was like, I guess it was the first time we did it.
I
But
think it was only like our third pod or something.
yeah, it was very much, mate, kudos to him
I reckon.
for like saying like, I'll jump on with these idiots.
I like how you're talking like we've made a lot of progress.
We haven't made a lot of progress in the space of podcasting. But if we're looking at it from our personal growth, we have definitely made a lot.
Yeah.
And if you look back at the Mawson interview, rather than just talking to him literally play by play about his career
You were
through
very
the
factual
sport,
back then.
what I would like to actually do is to get his insight into some of the other avenues of racing. He's got some really good people on board with him right now in relation to the marketing space as well. So I'd
I'd like
just
to hear about more of him as a
as a
guy.
person, even like his interest in like fitness and what role that plays in his motivations as a like just a bit more of a chat and a bit less of a and after 2024 this is what you're saying, like a bit more like that.
Yeah.
That's the future. So thank you to we had 3, we've got 1 viewer left, but thank you to everyone again for the last year listening to the pod. We've got 2,000 views, 2,000 downloads just about now in
Pretty
1 year.
much.